everybody, welcome to your virtual field trip experience. For the Macroorganism Diversity Lab, we are going to be exploring the different plants, fungi, and animals located on the MCC Nature Trails. We are going to be specifically exploring a trail called Witch Hazel Trail, which starts near the swamp shortcut and continues all the way through the woods and ends up back near Tree Swallow Loop. You guys should have your lab manuals out. You should be taking notes as we go through. That could be on the pages where the information about the different plant, fungus, and animal groups are, but more than likely you're going to find it better and easier to use the specimen fill in the blank sections at the very end of the lab handout. What you need to know about these virtual field trips is I filmed most of the video and took the pictures and figured out how to edit stuff. I am not an expert. There are going to be blurry shots and crummy shots, so I apologize in advance for that, but I think you'll agree that it turned out pretty darn decent for a first attempt at a virtual field trip lab. All images and video are mine unless otherwise identified by a source. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a 3-season video where you can see our trails in spring, summer, and fall. Again, specifically, we are on Witch Hazel Trail, and this is a map of our trails, a very teeny tiny map, but we have almost 5 miles of trails through a wide variety of different habitats. Our trails are open to the public year-round. They're free. You can bring dogs on them. So if you haven't checked out our trails before, I encourage you to click on the website link or the Facebook link and find us. So let's go ahead and check out our 3-season video. Hey everybody, and welcome to Witch Hazel Trail on Montcalm Community College's campus. I'm taking a walk today just to see what there is to see out here. I'm seeing some great late spring flowers. A lot of the ferns are beginning to arrive. I've been hearing pileated woodpeckers, so we'll listen for that in the background. If I'm quiet for a moment, you'll actually be able to hear quite a bit of birding activity. So the summer video was filmed in June. You'll see some mosquitoes buzzing around the camera, and the first 20 seconds or so is just bird sounds and footprints. Welcome, friends. We are currently walking along Witch Hazel Trail. Witch Hazel Trail is bordering deciduous forest to our left, and there's a wetland area to our right. Deciduous forests consist of broadleaf trees. That just means they have big, flat, green leaves. In Michigan, that means a lot of maple and oak, but the final or stable community structure will be maple and beech. Hey everybody, it's Heather. I'm back on Witch Hazel Trail. It is now October. You might have guessed that by the fresh sleeve of leaves on the ground. We can see quite a bit of leaf drop has already occurred, as well as color change. It's quite cool today, around the high 40s, and it has rained on and off today. So we're out here for just the last couple of late fall finds before putting together the presentation for you guys. Okay, so basically the recap there was we're in a deciduous forest with leaves, and we're going to explore some of the most common organisms. All right, so there are going to be 5 plant species that you are responsible for learning about. I'm going to start by introducing you to the Bryophyte group. And so we're going to watch the video and then a little bit more detail on the next page. So in this video segment, we are along Witch Hazel Trail, and we're going to show you some of the beautiful diversity of mosses. What you need to know about mosses is that they are the oldest group of plants. So they have the basic survival traits. They can do photosynthesis, and they have some protection from water loss. They lack a lot of the adaptations like vascular tissue, seeds, and flowers. So this is one very beautiful type of moss, and typically we're just going to refer to them as mosses. They all have individual species names as well as common names, but mosses are quite difficult to key out, so at an introductory level we're not really going to worry about that. This is a dried up moss, and one of the superpowers of mosses is that they can go through these fairly dormant stages, and then when water becomes available they green right up. So if we walk across the trail here, we can see this much greener but very similar moss. And then again, I'm going to cross the trail, and I saw a third moss over here that I wanted to focus on, sneakily hiding here in the leaves. But this is what we sometimes refer to as a pincushion moss because it's rounded like a pincushion, and sometimes those mosses all live together. So if we follow the base of this tree trunk, we can see that we've got something that looks like maybe part of a pincushion moss, a very small star-shaped moss, more pincushions, and as we walk around we see a great diversity. Okay, so let's capture some of that into our notes. So let's talk about the diversity. Here are 3 close-ups of mosses. So you can see there's a lot of variation in form. We are going to focus on the moss right here in the center. That is the one moss you have to know the common name of. So if you caught it in the video, that's the pincushion moss. I'm going to trace the edge. This is the moss we are talking about, because we actually have a second moss right here. That's this one on this side, and a third moss right here. That's this one on this side. But we're going to focus on the pincushion moss, and it gets its name for old-fashioned pincushions. Ask your moms or grandmas, they may know what we're talking about. Sometimes we hear it called a powder puff moss. It's fairly common, growing along ridges in the forest, and it likes a sandy or acidic soil, so that's some good habitat characteristics. Typically the forest, we find it in our oak and pine, and they have to be lightly forested. That just means that the trees aren't so dense, there's going to be sunlight coming through. They're more white than some of the other mosses. Look at the dark green here and the green at the bottom of this one. So they often can be paler. They have many layers of cells, and that hides their chlorophyll. And their name is actually a little bit of a clue to that. Leuco means white. So, all right, continuing our exploration of mosses, we learned in lecture that all plants do alternation of generations, but mosses are the only one with a dominant gametophyte. So if we look at this picture on the left, here is a moss, and here we can actually see where we've pulled out the individual plants. So this is one gametophyte, and here's a second gametophyte. Typically the gametophyte body is green, and the larger one and the one you're going to see walking through the woods. Now, if you walk through the woods at the right time of year, you might see, and again, beautiful diversity over here. We're seeing a few pincushion mosses along with some other stuff. But these tall, slender stalks, and these are brand new ones, so they actually have quite a bit of green in them, and over time they'll turn to more of this orangish, brownish red. That's the sporophyte stage. That's the stage that's going to produce the spores. All of these have little tips, or fat little tips, if you look, where the spores are going to fall out of during that stage of asexual reproduction. All right, so we've done our first species. We talked about the pincushion moss. We talked a little bit about where it lives, what it looks like, and the fact that it's in that primitive bryophyte group. Now we're going to advance just a little bit, and we are going to look at the bracken fern. The bracken fern, when it first emerges, most ferns emerge with coiled up parts of their leaves, and those are referred to as fiddleheads. And then those unfurl or uncurl, and you get something like this. So the entire above ground part of any fern is referred to as the frond, which is sort of similar to the leaf. You actually don't have the stem of the plants visible. That's in the ground. The stem is completely underground. So that thing that's growing out of the soil is part of the leaf. And so when we look at fern fronds or fern leaves, we pay a lot of attention to the overall shape. So the Bracken fern has a roughly triangular shape, okay? And sometimes we pay attention to how divided the different pieces are. We're not going to worry about that too much today, but that's another good clue if you're out in the woods. Okay, so this one is once divided, twice divided, 3 times divided. So that actually means it's a tripinnate fern. All right, on this one, here's a page out of the field guide, and I'll provide those as often as I can. I want to talk a little bit about some of the characteristics. So first of all, ferns, along with horsetails and club mosses, are in the seedless vascular group. So still no seeds like the mosses, but we've added vascular tissue. That's how they're able to grow upright off and out of the ground. This is the only species in its genus, which isn't a super common thing to happen. If we look at the scientific name, Pteridium aquilium, the aquili part actually means eagle's claw. And so when we look at either the fiddlehead or more specifically the 3 branches, it was named for the fact that it has those 3 branches coming off the main rachis, is what we call this stem-like structure right here. But that 3 things looked like an eagle claw to somebody. It's a great characteristic for this group. So not only are we looking for the kind of triangular shaped fronds that we see up top, but we're looking for that 3-part split. Only fern in Michigan that has it. Interestingly, there's a lot of myths and fables about this fern. They would burn it to bring rain to dry farm fields, and they thought that the smoke would keep away snakes and gnats and other individuals within kind of in that annoyance category. All right, so let's kind of recap what we've seen. So this is a shot of the forest floor in June, and we can see some of those bracken ferns. So there's a nice bracken fern right there, another one, another one. Very common fern in the forest. We don't see a ton of other ferns because it's too dry for them. The bracken ferns like the sunlight. So see how the light is hitting this area right in here? That's where you're going to see them in the breaks of sunlight. Over here, we've got a nice diversity of mosses, including some of those pincushion mosses that we talked about. In the second video, we are going to talk about some of the more advanced plants. See you in a few.